Hello, my fabulous art friends. This week we're going to take the Zentangles that we worked on last week and we're going to create a hot air balloon and put different Zentangles that we enjoy drawing into the different parts of the balloon. So you're going to need a few things for this lesson. We're going to need some Zentangles. You should have the one that you drew last week and the week before that. If not, you can always refer back to these, which are in the Google Classroom. You're going to need a piece of paper, a pencil, a black marker. I have a thin Sharpie and a thicker Sharpie, so I can do different types of line work, and something to color with. Now, I would recommend using markers or colored pencils for this. You're going to be coloring in very tiny areas. Crayons also will work well. Paint might be a bit harder to work with. So grab those things and let's get started. We're going to move everything we don't need right now out of the way. We're starting with a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm going to make sure that my paper is being held vertical or portrait style. It should not be held landscape style. I'm going to want more room for my hot air balloon, so I'm going to need it nice and tall, just like that. Now, near the top of my paper, I'm going to start by making an upside down, I'm going to say cereal bowl, rainbow line, a flattened letter U. But I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to just go around. Now, the awesome thing about hot air balloons is it doesn't have to be perfectly even on any side as you draw it, because in reality, when a hot air balloon is up in the air, it's kind of moving and floating all over the place. So now to connect my hot air balloon, a hot air balloon is really like the shape of a balloon. So it's like an oblong circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab here, and first I'm going to just kind of outline the way that I'm going to go around, making sure that it's rounded and then connects back up. Perfect. Now, before I go ahead and add the specific lines that turn this into a hot air balloon, I'm going to go down here to the bottom. There's usually a basket that someone will sit in or work in to operate the hot air balloon. Now, you can make your basket as big or as small as you'd like. I really wouldn't make it too wide. It should be small. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a square or a rectangle. I've made the edges kind of rounded. I'm going to make a line that goes across right here. And then I'm going to attach the basket to the hot air balloon by using wires or ropes. I'm going to attach one from each corner going straight over. Attach one from the bottom going up. And I'm kind of putting a curve on some things. I want it to look a little realistic. If I make everything perfectly straight, it might not be so realistic. Now, technically, this basket is three-dimensional, but we are making a two-dimensional drawing today. So there would be a back corner of the basket for the other wire to go from. I'm just going to grab right here and go straight on up like that, and do the same thing on this side. Now, creating the hot air balloon. Hot air balloons are separated by a top half and a bottom half, which is why that's the way that we started to draw that shape. So I'm going to find the spots where I hooked it together, and I'm going to connect those with a big smile line. Just like that. Now I have to separate my hot air balloon into sections, and I'm going to start by putting a straight line that goes all the way down. I'm going to start up near the center, and I'm going to create this straight line. See how I kind of broke it there? I stopped, and I'm going to continue trying to meet where that middle line is, but it doesn't have to perfectly fit there. While our drawing is two-dimensional, I would like my balloon to have a rounded shape to it. So to add the rest of the lines, I'm going to make them curved. I'm going to start up here as if it was coming from the center of that balloon and curving down. I'm going to connect here and curve back in to the bottom, just like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to create another section. Now you don't have to, you could stop right where we were, but I think it looks a little bit more realistic when I add more sections to my hot air balloon. I am making sure that I do the same thing on each side so that it is evenly spaced, evenly drawn. So there I have the basic hot air balloon. Now, when this was done a few years ago, the student put their name right here. So you can do that if you'd like. You don't have to. I did go through with everyone how to create a texture for that basket. And it's kind of a woven basket. Typically, that's what it looks like. So to just make a very simple pattern, I just create alternating lines going across the whole thing, making sure that I'm putting 3 lines in each section. You could do 4, you could have 5, but I'm just making sure that the number is consistent, that I am following through and not changing it up. It's very important when we're making patterns to make sure that we are consistent. That means to stay the same. And right there I have my basket. So next up, I need to add Zentangles into this space. So this might be when you look back and you're like, hey, let me grab that sheet and those papers that I made. Let me find the Zentangles that I enjoyed creating the most and including them into all the different sections of my hot air balloon. Now this gets a little tricky. We learned these Zentangles in tiny squares. Some people made different shapes to put them in, but we learned them in small doses. So what you're going to do is find the ones you liked the most, and you're going to place those in the bigger spaces. Things that are very, very detailed are going to take longer to color. So please keep that in mind as you are adding Zentangles and different designs to things. So I'm going to start by adding a few before I fast forward to those being done so we can move on to the next step. So I'm going to start right there. This is when Miss Fontaine wishes she knew how to fast forward her videos. But sometimes it helps for you to see exactly how I'm doing this, because you can always copy along right afterwards. Remember when my pencil would go off the paper, just like we did when we were in the earlier grades, we would kind of air draw to make sure that those lines fall where they're supposed to. Making sure that I'm filling the entire space. We don't want to leave any space uncovered. Remember that Zentangles are methodical line designs. They are mindfulness for art. So you don't want to rush through and make it very sloppy. This is a project you do want to take your time on. Yes, it does take a little bit more time than normal. It is slightly time consuming, but it's very satisfying to complete this and have it finished. And what you're doing is you're creating those mindfulness lines, and you're also making like an adult coloring book page. There are a lot of very cool Zentangle examples where people have created animals and entire pictures and just fill them with these beautiful designs. Now remember, you are allowed to add 1 or 2 of your own designs if you would like. I would absolutely love to see that. You are not required to by any means, but I also want to make sure that we are using some Zentangles that we all know and love, and we're not just kind of making them all up as we go. Okay, it's very important. That pyramid type square, always harder to say, how do I fit that into one of these spaces? These aren't not a square. How do I do that? And kind of do it exactly the same, just imagining that my space was bigger. Still going around, just like I went around the square in our other how-to page. Just imagining that it all attaches to one another. And that right there. And then let's see. So the idea is to go until you are completed filling in those Zentangles, and then we're going to move right on to that next step. All right, so once I've added all of the Zentangles to each section of my hot air balloon, I'm going to take my thick Sharpie, and I'm actually going to just go around the outside to kind of create an outline. Don't worry if your outline isn't perfect. If you went off of your pencil marks a little bit, it's not a big deal. You can always erase the pencil marks afterwards. So again, I'm doing the basic outline. So I am going around all these shapes I made. The only thing I'm really not going to outline with the thicker Sharpie are my Zentangles. I'm also going to make sure that I outline the basket and the wires. And I'm even going to do the little design down here. And like I said, you can see that I've left some pencil marks by accident. All you have to do is take your eraser and just kind of erase right over that. And it's going to get rid of all of those pencil marks. So it's going to look as though the Sharpie was exactly where it was supposed to be. Nice little trick to kind of clean that up when you're outlining. You can go right over that with the eraser, and that cleans that up perfectly. So the steps up until now have been required. You do need to draw the hot air balloon, we do need to add Zentangles, and we do need to outline the entire object. The reason that we do that is though so that it stands out and so it doesn't kind of fall apart into the background so we can't see it. This next step is an optional step. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take that thinner Sharpie and I'm going to trace over my Zentangles. Some people might ask, well, why would you do that, Miss Montaigne? And I'm doing that because when I look at this completed one from a few years ago, or actually from last year, it the colors are kind of blended into one another, and I feel that outlining each Zentangle might give it that little extra added pop that it needs. So I'm going to take that thin Sharpie. I'm going to very carefully go over the lines. And it's going to be a little hard to even see the difference in a video because the lines are only getting slightly darker. But what that's going to do is when I add the color, it really is going to make the whole thing just completely stand out. So I'm gonna fast forward myself so I can cover all of those with some thin Sharpie. So now that I have outlined everything in Sharpie, there is kind of a darker tone. You can see the colors a little bit better. Now, again, you can add your name in there if you'd like. Maybe you want to add the name of your air balloon company. But now it is time to add color. So when we go to add color, we want to make sure that we add color using a pattern of some sort. I'm going to use my Prismacolor colored pencils. I do enjoy coloring with them, and I think that they'll work out really well. I am going to color some areas with my darker Sharpie marker, and I'm actually going to do that first because there are some areas from the Zentangles that I had chosen that are just darker spaces, and those would be a lot easier to fill in with a marker. Of course, going very, very carefully, making sure to take my time. So as I come into this one, I'm going to add that color. And again, this one is just kind of with a dark marker. So let me get those dark marker spots done, and then we can see how we add those colors. Okay, so I filled in those dark spaces with the black dark Sharpie. So now I'm just going to color an area or so we can see how I would do this in a pattern. So taking a look at this area right here, I'm going to create a pattern where it's every other color or maybe every third color. Maybe you want to create a rainbow of some sort, but the idea is to color in patterns. If I just take my crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever it is that you're using to color, and you just kind of scribble through the whole thing, then all of that work that you just did is kind of wasted because you will have covered everything that you made. So we're going to make sure that we really take our time. Again, this is why assignments have a 2-week window on them. You really want to make sure that you take your time first with the coloring, then the outlining. I'm sorry, first with the drawing, then with the outlining, and then lastly with the coloring. We really don't want to rush any of this. Okay. Very, very important to focus on getting that all right. See, as I'm finishing up this design, this pattern, how awesome these Zentangles really do look when you color them very carefully, slowly, and completely. And now we've reached the point where all the color has been added. I colored everything into a pattern. Some patterns have color and white, some patterns have black and white, some patterns are all color. I did color the basket in a light brown tan color, and I even added some fire because if we're not aware, that is how hot air balloons work. There is one more step in our longest drawing yet. We're going to read or listen to the book Sky Color. The link is attached to the Google assignment, and I'd like you to remember how we learned that the sky is made up of so many different colors. So the last thing that you're going to do is you are going to listen to the book Sky Color and then add your own sky color to your hot air balloon, just like this. And just like that, we are done. For those that are wondering how I achieve the color in the background, it is crayons. And it is a mix of yellow, oranges, pinks, and blues. And unfortunately, the glare makes it a little bit hard to see, but I will attach a completed image of my hot air balloon to the Google assignment so you can also see. Um, I hope that you guys have a lot of fun doing this. Please take your time, work nice and slowly. This will be a beautiful piece of artwork that you can have framed and hung in your house when you are done. I cannot wait to see your completed work. Bye.